This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Mayor Ann Velisis, and I'm going to kick off this meeting of the Budget Committee at 5:10 on Thursday, June 5th. And we will begin with the roll call. Councillor Burns.
Yes.
Councillor Brennan.
Here.
Councillor Webb. Councillor Rask. Councillor Lovendahl.
Here.
Councillor Pogwizd.
Jim here.
Committee Member Walker.
Here.
Committee Member Jim Prouty. Committee Member Randy Scholten. Committee Member Rick Lindy.
Here.
Committee Member Lori Prouty.
Here.
Committee Member Laura Mason. Okay. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So were you saying, Melissa, you wanted to just start with a few questions as opposed to, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so
Answers.
I apologize for the craze. She was here yesterday, and again, we thought we had the most up-to-date situation to highlight some of your questions and to get those done, and we realized we did not have the correct thing, so I apologize for that. So if you wanted to go and kind of put your tabbies on, if that's going to help you with these, the problem is that it's also was sent in discrete funds. So it's going to be page 1 of 1 or page 2 of 3 about 6 times through here because each fund is a separate thing. They're still in the correct order. They still have the headings at the top. It's just not as complete according to the table of contents that we had before because there were changes that had to be made. Okay, so I think it would be good just to go, because the general fund is one, again, that we really focus on of being able to have money go transfer in and transfer out to that. We had not, blessed it all the way before. And so I want to highlight, when he gets back, we'll highlight the changes that were made between the general fund and specifically to parks, which is different than this document. The rest of this document that you have in front of you is correct. It's just we had to update the general fund and parks because we realized that we had placed all $1.6 million that we got for the grant. We placed it all in this coming year's budget as one whole piece. However, we've already gotten started on the community building, which again is in parks. And so we have to separate the money we're spending this year in parks and then also say what we're going to continue to spend once July happens. So that was the difference that we found in that. So that's one of the major changes that we needed to do, which is, again, in the park. So we'll come back to those. There was a question on the police budget, which is Fund 20. It's the third fund in.
Public safety.
Public safety. Mm-hmm. And so there are 3 orange highlights there in the middle bar. These were basically the updates that we looked at for the salaries for the police chief and police officer 5 in particular, and also police officer 4. Police officer 4 was the one that we had the question about. It had been much higher. And so the full amount that we will be charged for police officer 4, which is our seasonal part-time reserve, is $14,000, where before it had been calculated as a full-time person. That's why the number was so large. So that salary was incorrect. So again, that's line 19, police officer 4.
So it's not.
So we just needed to make sure that those were, those were
the other
corrected.
ones. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
We also, if you go to the next page of the public safety one, we did continue to, we it stays the same of the $145,000 that we had originally said before. But that was one of the numbers that we looked at to see how much we could do based upon, again, the public safety fee that we had. So that's why it's orange. It's still, the public safety is still in the black for this year. And then we'll see how things moving forward. So this is also still included with the proposed fee on the utility bill.
And just to clarify, Melissa, it's looking like the numbers, these orange numbers are not really, these are all the same for whatever reason.
That's why I said, I think those, I think,
Okay.
I think the highlight is incorrect on this page. So it should, the
Just- it's just the
$14,000 should be the
14,000, yeah.
part that is different. The other
Got
ones
it.
are the same.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, there was a question about Fund 31. There was a piece that said water reserve. And the question was, where did the water reserve funds go? Because it doesn't show that any funds go into there. As Councilor Pogwiz discussed in the last meeting, the whole point of having the water reserve fund and having the sewer reserve funds was that when you calculate, when the utility bill is calculated, there is a small percentage that goes to that particular fund. In the backbones of Tyler, we calculate it so we know how much each bill gets and we know how much is collected, but it doesn't fall into that particular fund. It all goes to the water enterprise and it all goes to the sewer enterprise. Those two funds flow into there. The main thing was that it was to be called out for repairs and maintenance only, like to buy equipment for those places. And so what we have realized in looking at this is that, and that's where the orange is to highlight on these, on the sewer fund and the water fund, is that the money that we have used for emergency repairs and maintenance, R&M, those sorts of things, are more than what we would have moved in from the water reserve or the sewer reserve monies. So it's mostly to call it out that the intent of that is to make sure that it goes to purchasing that equipment and repairs. And so it does go to that. So that was her feeling with this, that it doesn't actually stay in that account.
Right.
Unless it's like a surplus.
Right, which we don't have a surplus. We've spent more money on that than we collected.
Well, in the water fund, we only spent 1,000 more.
Right, it's
80
close,
it was
right.
90,000 and we had 89,000. But yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to know where it was.
Correct, and that's why, that's why I'm answering with that, because that was the intent of what that was for. And so, because
We have to revisit and adopt that fund or.
Yes.
You're right. Yeah. And I just thought while he's doing that copying that we could be talking about some of the questions you had. Another one was in the sewer enterprise fund, line 8, which is in the, there was a question about the restricted cash hyphen deposits. And it had been $2,000 budgeted last year. We had moved it down to 1,000 this year. And the question was, what is that? That is a renter's deposit, both in water and in sewer. So that if the renter, anytime a renter comes in, they have to put in $50 as a deposit for their water, and they have to put in $50 as a deposit for their sewer. And so that's the monies collected from them having that deposit. And then if they move or if they do, that could go back to them. But it didn't collect as much as we had thought that it would have. And so that's why we moved that number lower from the 2,000 to the 1,000.
Okay. Are there more of those or can we?
I think it's just on 2 pages later is the highlighted orange in the sewer. Again, that highlighted orange shows you that there's the amount of money that was spent out of sewer is more than what the reserve would have collected. So again, that's just to highlight that piece. And I believe those were the main questions or concerns that had been brought up from the last meeting.
Okay, so at this point, maybe what we can do is begin by going back and just reapproving the funds that we had already adopted, but with the changes. So,
Joseph, when I asked for, when I wanted like the whole general fund, I wanted. Okay.
okay, so let's look at the Parks Fund then again, now that Joseph is passing it out. So what we're saying here is we just had to repopulate the numbers, the amount of money that's basically already been, that was received on the revenue side, but then also the amount that has been spent already for the community building, which is where?
On the last page.
Oh yeah. So the last page where it's blue here, because it's, or it's green because it's, the background is orange. That's the change that was made. Things that were green.
Same thing on line 71, the things that are green. It was also, some of the money was spent for the American Legion Hall out of that because we had to do some on there.
Planning, yeah.
So that's all we'll spend before July 1st?
Right.
Yes.
And so because of that, we're going to have to bring a supplemental budget to say that this was revenues that came in that we didn't account for this current year. So we need to amend that to say, to make sure that our budget moving forward from here forward reflects what we actually did.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adopt Fund 14 Parks with these corrections.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Brennan,
Yes.
Counselor Lovendall,
Yes.
Counselor Pogwizd,
Tim, yes.
Committee Member Walker,
Yes.
Committee Member Lindy, Committee Member Proudy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we will also, we talked about the corrections to the Public Safety Fund, which were, again, just making those changes to correct the amount of money that the officer received, and I think to adjust that PERS accordingly, or some benefit line in that. So I would entertain a motion to adopt Fund 20 Public Safety with corrections.
I would make a motion to approve Fund 20 with changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Committee Member Proudy,
Yes.
Committee Member Lindy,
Yes.
Committee Member Walker,
Yes.
Counselor Pogwizd,
Tim, yes.
Counselor Lovendall,
Yes.
Counselor Brennan,
Not vote.
Counselor Burns.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So now we are going to move on to Fund, is it 31, which is water reserves. Here it says, yeah. So that is, flip through to get to water reserves.
I'd make a motion to adopt the Water Reserve Fund.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Counselor Brennan,
Yes.
Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Pogwizd,
Tim, yes.
Counselor Lovendall,
Yes.
Lori Proudy,
Yes.
Rick Lindy,
Yes.
Mickey Walker.
Yes.
Okay, we've got that. Okay, next we're going to move on to Fund 40, which is, well, I'm going on the agenda here and it looks like, but we didn't do, here we should be
We should be
doing,
doing sewer 35.
yeah, it's kind of,
Sewer was approved.
did we already do sewer?
Sewer was
We did.
the last one.
Okay.
Water reserves were skipped because there were questions.
Oh, right, yeah,
concerning
got
them.
it. Okay, so now we
So
go,
Streets is the first one that we haven't done that yet.
got it. Thank you so much for the clarification, Joseph. What would we do without you? I don't know.
You don't ever find out.
Nope, we don't.
Thank you.
Which one are we on?
We're on 40
Streets.
streets. Okay, so Melissa, is there anything further you want to tell us about this streets fund?
I don't believe so. Streets is one of those that, as we've talked about, we don't, when we have the state highway tax that comes in, we do have to call out line 4, the possible ODOT grant. That's the one that we have to fix the potholes at the end of 18th and also Hensley Hill. And so that's a grant that we've put in for previously. We had the engineers look at it, double check it, adjust it, because it's a $250,000 allocation. We'll find out about that, I believe, mid-July. So everything we're hearing says that we're in good line for that, which is why we included it, wanted to call it out. But it's just a line in and a line out. So if we don't get that grant, we are not doing those projects. So if it doesn't come in, it doesn't go out.
Would
And-
ODOT do that project or would that go out to bid?
No, it would go out. It would go out to bid.
Through us.
That local group usually ends up with that. I can't think of their name off the top of my head.
We've also talked about one thing we did add to this that was not in the prior iterations of this was to add safety striping, like the blue line. Some of the communities that you see, there's lines on the pavement that say, you know, tsunami safe zone or this way for tsunami evacuation. We had put that in here for 18th Street and also to go up Hensley Hill. So as they're doing that striping and as they're doing that, we'll also be able to have big visuals that show this is where you can, and a place where you can go to get to higher ground
As part of that.
as part of that grant, which we did add this year.
Okay, and just to remind everybody, we're moving all the personnel over again back to the general fund. So
Can I explain something on that?
yeah,
On that fund, well, most people aren't looking at their old ones, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah.
But before,
It's negative.
in the late year, we were $1 million short, and the reason why we're not in this new updated version is because we're not doing transfers out of streets back to the general fund because we just can't afford to. We don't make revenue in streets, so we can no longer, we've never done it.
Never
We
done
can't do it.
Right.
So that's why you see $1 million short
Yeah.
and 2930, and you see the fund's pretty flush. I mean, it's,
and in some ways, the streets, a lot of the work of the streets is the public works work, and it's the staff and all that, but it's a separate fund because of that source of revenue, which is the highway funding, the federal highway funding that has to come into this. And our public works staff does a lot of the work that's related to street stuff. So anyway,
and a lot of the street work is basically from the water or the sewer fund when they have to tear the roads up to fix something.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that had happened before, again, we talked about the transfers that were automatic transfers. So it would say from streets to the general fund or from someplace to whatever, that were just set up as automatic transfers within these funds. We've really tried to say, and that was that reallocation on the very first page of the first one of how we were going to reallocate to say, how much can the funds give to the general fund if it was going to be healthy, that 5-year look back to say what it would be. And then once she calculated what the percentages would be, then the question became, but can those funds do those transfers? And if the answer is yes, they can do those transfers, then we went ahead and did that. But then as we took another run at it to say, this is something that if they can't do the transfers, what can they do? and still remain healthy. And then we adjusted accordingly so that what had been a thought about doing in the other budget, like Councilor Pogwizd said, we said, well, wait a minute, what would happen if we don't make them move that? We can still keep that fund above water.
So that's the difference of the 75,000 transfer.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Okay, did I ask for the motion or do I?
I would make a motion to
Okay.
approve Fund 40 streets.
I second it.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Counselor Pogwizd,
Tim, yes.
Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Brennan,
Yes.
Counselor Lovendall,
Yes.
Committee Member Lindy,
Yes.
Committee Member Walker,
Yes.
Committee Member Proudy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving to Fund 42, Street Reserves. So it looks pretty straightforward here. The same sort of thing.
yeah, anything that can go. So we did leave that transfer to street funds of the 60,000 because that's where the work is done with that. So then if you again look back, you can see where we're going to be doing more repairs than the 60,000. So we know it's in the reserve. Money is going to be used for the streets. And that was the transfer in.
And in future years, we will be not doing any transfers.
That's the goal. The goal is to get this to where it is very clear, very transparent, very straightforward, much more aligned to what is actually happening now as we move these forward. And so as those funds that have zeros all the way to the left here in a couple of years, as they can fall off, then we can be adjusting it. And remember that everything that happens in this budget, when Ann Heath does it on her spreadsheet and click, click, click and goes through as we try to simplify it, that means that we have to either have Dina Lang, who's our Tyler expert, which is the software package that makes these things, the software package that does this, she has to go back and actually build the backbones of this and say which revenue stream goes where and how actually in the system. And so she has to do that between the time we say yes to these things and then we come in for July 1 because it has to be taken care of. So we were looking at this and thinking, what are the things we can do to streamline it and make it more simple now, but understanding we're going to continue to have to do that sort of transition moving forward. So we're doing the things that we felt was the more low-hanging fruit to try and simplify this, but we didn't want to just whoosh it all over at one time because that would be just too much to do.
Okay, anything else any other things to say about street funds? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt Fund 42, Street Reserves.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. Lori Proudy,
Yes.
Mickey Walker,
Yes.
Rick Lindy,
Yes.
Sarah Lovendall,
Yes.
Counselor Pogwizd,
Tim, yes.
Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Brennan.
Yes.
On we go to Fund 45, Equipment Replacement. So do you have anything to tell us about that one, Melissa?
I don't, and it's basically, these are the things that it says transfer out to water and to sewer. Again, where the equipment gets used and where we need the replacement is in water and sewer. And so that's where that transfer goes to support that.
Yep.
We were talking too, this is one of those examples of things we didn't want to do this time, but in future, because this is what this fund always does, is it just transfers from here to water and sewer basically all the time. We're talking about being able to absorb this fund into their moving forward. It doesn't need to have its own standalone extra fund, extra thing to worry about. It could be slid over there. So I think moving forward, that will be part of the proposal, is to say, we don't need this whole extra fund, a whole extra thing here. But not yet.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to pass Fund 45 equipment replacement.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Counselor Brennan,
Yes.
Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Lovendall,
Yes.
Counselor Pogwizd,
Jim, yes.
Committee Member Walker,
Yes.
Committee Member Lindy,
Yes.
Committee Member Proudy.
Yes.
Okay. Then we are moving on to Fund 61, which is the Water SDC Fund.
Can you explain that fund to our committee members?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you'll probably be able to do it better than I could, Tim, but so water SDCs, those are system development charges. So whenever you see SDCs, that's system development charges. And we have them, I'll kind of do them together, 61 and 62. So we have one side for water and one side for sewer. These are, when we have new development in our town, we have people who come to hook up to our system. And we obviously charge them a hookup fee, right? A connection fee for both of these, but we also charge an SDC fee. And that SDC fee is system development charges, which means if John Isidore needs to change a pump and he changes it from he changes a 10 horsepower pump to a 10 horsepower pump, I'm making up stuff. Okay. If he changes it out, and it's just a newer model, but it still has the same capacity and the same everything else, he cannot use these system development charges because system development charges are intended to increase the capacity of the system. So if he were to replace a 10 horsepower pump with a 40 horsepower pump, then he could use the SDC fees to do that. Similar thing, if we have when we were going to do water line replacements, as we do that, if we replace a 2-inch line with a 2-inch line, we can't use system development charges. That has to come out of just plain water, for example. If we change from a 2-inch line to a 4-inch line, we can then use system development charges because it increases the capacity of our system to serve more people. So this is kind of a futures fund. That's how I think of it. You can't use this to replace things to keep the same capacity. You have to this is truly a fund that really looks to the future.
Just if I can say, one of the pieces about that is if we didn't do that and people just kept adding on with just connection fees, without that, we wouldn't have any way to accommodate growth. This fund is kind of put into place so that, we have some resources to do that when we need to.
So that's been an interesting learning curve for me to try to figure out, well, what can we use with this? What can we not use with this? It's kind of an interesting thing. But also, one of the ways that we have been able to use this, and the mayor can speak more to this, but when we have particular grants that we go out and they say, you're going to go do this upgrade or go do this grant, this money can be used as a match money. So if we get a grant, then it can be used if we're increasing the system and we're increasing the capacity of our system. This money can be held as the match money or kind of the earnest money for things like that. So we've tried to keep this is like the one place where we do have some reserves that we're trying to hold on to so that we can be increasing the system when we have the capacity to do so.
And these are the totals that we have today. We don't have, that's it.
So I would entertain a motion to adopt Fund 61 for water SDCs.
So moved.
A second.
Any further questions or discussions?
I had one question, Ann.
Yes?
We had discussions about trying to increase the SDC's water and sewer by the CPI.
Yep.
Are we going to do that this year? Was that calculated into this?
I don't think we calculated that into this, but we're going to try to do, one of the things we were talking before the meeting started about how the finance committee looked at things that we could do to sort of get ourselves back on track. And that was one of the things, because these rates have not gone up for quite some time, I don't think, or at least for a couple of years.
Yeah, they were, again, put on hold during COVID.
So we need to, it's on our list of, the staff has direction from council to come back to us with the package of fee increases that makes sense to make sure we're covering our costs. And also we put on there, we have this situation where some people paid their SDC fees like in 1978 and then never built a house. Back when it was, like maybe $200, and now it's, I think, more like 17,000. So we have to upgrade our code so that we say, if you don't build your house within 5 years, if the fee goes up, you're going to have to pay the difference, because otherwise the city gets kind of stuck with a lot of costs that aren't really fairly paid for, So that's something
That's a
we're just,
discussion that is being,
that we should,
that you will be
that
discussing.
council, we directed staff to bring us a proposal on that as part of, that came out of the finance committee. So anyway,
I have a question.
Yep.
Just interest on investments. What are those investments? I just don't know.
I believe, I don't know the answer to this fully, but I think this is my understanding, so I shouldn't even answer it, but I'll give my best.
Give your best, give it a shot, Mayor.
Is that the city has to put all of its money in what's called LGIP, the local government investment pool. And monies that are in funds that are invested for us through that pool. So we're not like, Melissa doesn't have the job of calling up like, some investment firm or anything. It's managed by the state through a kind of a mass fund. So I think I'm right on that.
I think you're right,
I
yeah.
wouldn't know if you were wrong.
It was a good answer.
There's a lot of things like I kind of, how you pick up things as you go, but then until somebody asks you the question, you don't know if you really know. I'm pretty sure that's correct, but okay. So if there's no further questions, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Pogwizd,
Jim, yes.
Councillor Lovendall,
Yes.
Councillor Brennan,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Committee Member Proudy,
Yes.
Committee Member Lindy,
Yes.
Committee Member Walker.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Now we'll go on to the sewer SDCs. Same thing, different flavor.
Well, definitely a different flavor.
Wrong metaphor.
That wasn't
Wrong metaphor.
It's true.
Yeah, it is very true. It is.
I will entertain a motion to approve the Fund 62 sewer SDCs.
I would motion to approve the sewer SDC Fund 62.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Brennan,
Yes.
Councillor Lovendall,
Yes.
Councillor Pogwizd,
Jim, yes.
Committee Member Walker,
Yes.
Committee Member Lindy,
Yes.
Committee Member Proudy.
Yes.
Okay. So now that brings us back to the general fund, right? We've made our way through all of these funds. And now let's see. So that is back to the old version, right? Do we have, oh no, that's,
There's this version.
okay.
Scott
It's,
does have it on the front.
okay. It doesn't say it. So that's why, oh, there it is. General fund 10. Okay. So did you say, what were the adjustments in this, Melissa? Were there any adjustments in this made?
It was really, the only highlight I can see is that transfer to public safety in the non-departmental, but that was the same number that we had had before. I think we were looking at, when we were thinking about fee amounts and what could be, and we were trying to see what could still go and not, to keep everything. Again, the whole thing is we have to have black across the whole bottom, right, in order to approve it. So it is highlighted in orange, but I don't believe that's a change from the original.
No,
It's the same.
Okay.
So everything in this new version is black line all the way across with the decisions that we've made.
I'm sorry, with
So
the savings we have made?
everything is in the black. We don't have to tweak anything or.
No, and that was the whole goal, is that in order for us to push forward a budget and to have you folks approve it, is it has to be for
Has to
that
be in
year,
the
it
black.
needs to be in the black.
and this new copy that he gave us reflects all those changes we just discussed on those funds.
And this is the water increase, water and sewer increase is worked into this,
Right.
and the law enforcement fee. And the law enforcement fee includes all the businesses, just everybody that's got a water hookup?
Correct.
That's the proposal.
Yes, that's the proposal for this, is that it's the folks who have accounts for utilities, water, sewer.
And we did, since we have that topic that came up, we did schedule a town hall meeting on that topic for June 16th, which is going to be a week from Monday. And I'd love to talk about that topic a little bit more before we adjourn the meeting, but just to bring it up. So any other questions? I mean, one of the other questions I know we had discussed at various times was we do have in this fund, we don't have the Jubilee Fund Committee having their line item, but we have money in the TLT funds that would give us the opportunity to give money to them in the next year if we so choose to do that. We have up to 15,000 in that TLT fund right now. So, I mean, I just kind of feel like everything is pretty darn bare bones in this, and that's like one like little thing that is maybe not, but it's still pretty bare bones,
And I know we discussed the 45,000 for City Hall. There's a line item for,
For improvements, is that
Yeah.
what you mean? Mhm.
that included the ADA, and you were going to look at some other things. That
Correct. So those were things that, yes, so the doors, the automatic doors, the ability, yes, there's,
Did that include the roof? I know we talked about it, but
I don't know that it included the roof.
I didn't think it did. I was just,
which line is that? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I come across it earlier in the general fund.
Was it non-departmental or something?
Yes.
Actually, I think it was,
Well, City Hall, R&M.
it's in there.
Oh, yeah, 17 on page 1 of 3. Got it. Oh, yeah, or so. Yeah, it's only
And
15,000.
City Hall,
So,
well, City Hall repairs, the capital outlay, City Hall repairs is 45,000 on the next page at the top.
okay, so that one might be the roof, but I don't remember.
So we have 15 and the 45.
So we're going to get on, I guess, to make things complicated, we're going to get on that ASAP to get some of that stuff done.
That is the plan. But we also have, so the other piece that's, gives me hives. The other piece that's hard about this is we don't have our, because we're just finishing it, we don't have our 2024 audit fully finished. It's very close to being fully finished, but auditors can make changes to your past books to make sure that things are correct. So it hasn't been corrected yet. And then we've now built this current budget that we are living in right now on those numbers. And so if something was wrong before that hasn't been adjusted, then we would have to adjust in the current year that we've done. But we've moved all the way through this year. I can't do very many adjustments. So I have been tight as a tick with my staff to say we are not spending money on things unless we have to have them. And some things we do. If a pump goes belly up, you have to go take care of that. There's things that we have to spend money on and we have to do, but that would be someplace I would imagine, again, that if something happened, we wouldn't spend that. We're trying to not spend as much because remember, we have to make it through our JSON months, right? July, August, September, October, November, before our tax revenues come to us. So we will live lean through the first part of this to make sure that we are not overspending, which means we might have a little bit more in our beginning fund balance than what we think of also. That could go either way. But we've just really tried to, in the last year and a smidgen, knowing the situation that we're in, we have not been doing things or getting things that are
No projects or anything that, yeah.
I mean, if we don't have a grant for it, I mean, we've been spending money on things that we have grants for, and people have been going and trying to get more grants and doing that too. But we have not been doing, we've been really focused on need to have, not want to have, and certainly not nice to have, right? We are beans and rice right now. We are in have to have, need to have situations. And so that's kind of the mindset that we've been working under, and we will continue to work under that
So we'll hold off.
for at least the first 3 months. So I'm not going to say, yes, we're going to immediately go put this out for bid or whatever, because I mean, truly we have things with our water system that are going to take a precedent over that. So I'm not going to necessarily spend on that until I know a little bit better where we're at.
And you, as you well know, Tim, too, that we have inherent capacity limitations, not only for money, but of what staff can actually tackle and
Well, that's
do.
why
So
I
it's,
asked.
you know,
and-
if the water situation, if there's a higher priority project, that has to come first. Even though we'd like to do
Well, yeah.
it all
we-
yesterday.
The budget is, you know, it's a snapshot.
Yes, it is.
We try to budget for, because the key is you budget for it, because then you have the money.
Mhm.
Sometimes you may not end up using the money for that, or even using the money at all, but
Right.
that's where we're gonna get back to.
Correct. And that's what we're really trying to do, is to say, how can we, just like everyone's household, we're living lean right now and trying to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible and really only focusing on the things that we can do with capacity of our financial capacity and also with our staff capacity at this time. I mean, we're pushing on it.
Does the state have requirements for the ADA that you? have
Yes,
to
and we
uphold?
do have that. And so we have to have a plan for what we're doing. And so one of the plans is to, you know, put covers on our ADA bathroom, you know, on the pipe, so that someone who maybe couldn't
So
feel their
that's
legs
okay, you
wouldn't
just
burn
have a
themselves.
plan.
We have a plan, and we're gonna do some of these things that as long as we're showing progress and that we are trying to work toward that, that's good. And of course, I would love nothing more than to, you know, with a swipe, have it in 1 year to be able to fix all, because we know it's a problem. We know it's a problem. So like, we're prioritizing the entry doors and, again, covers for the pipes and lowering the mirror and making sure that we're having things that are as good as we can do and as safe as we can be, obviously.
And one of the really big thing is going to be the community building renovation is going to make that whole space ADA accessible, which is great, because that's a place that that has not been accessible to people
Mhm.
very well, you know.
No.
So that was one of the main focal points of doing this renovation, is that is a huge upgrade on that front for people who are enjoying that space all the way around. So there's new ramps to both buildings that'll be the front to the vestibules, and then even in the community center, obviously the restrooms will be ADA accessible, and also even to get up on this, they call it a platform, not a stage. There's rules, but on the platform, you know, a ramp so that people can get up and down there as well. So we've really, that's the place where we've made great strides in that department. And we of course want to do more, but so yes, those are the plans, but
Yeah, the community building was horrible.
yeah.
I've personally seen people fall off the stairs there,
Mhm.
and we want to get back to where we can use that facility
Yes.
again. It hasn't been in use like it used to be. It used to be used by the ESA bingo and,
Right.
or the ESA group and doing their bingo and
Yep,
just
all
a
sorts
lot
of things.
community.
So
Yeah.
that's a
So
positive.
it's going to be a beautiful space, and people are working really hard on it. And so we're making it
Okay,
happen.
so we're getting a little bit off. So does anybody have any further questions about the general fund? If not, I just would entertain a motion then that we adopt Fund 10, the general fund.
So moved.
We'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion or questions on this fund? Okay, I will call for the vote. Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Brennan,
Yes.
Counselor Lovendall,
Yes.
Counselor Pogwiz,
Yes.
Committee Member Walker,
Yes.
Committee Member Lindy,
Yes.
Committee Member Proudy.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we have adopted all the funds, and I guess that means that the Budget Committee, by adopting all these funds, is recommending them for consideration by the City Council. And in that meeting, the City Council will take up this budget at its meeting on June 18th, right? Which is not on here. But we have some other additional business that this committee needs to do. And I think Joseph, maybe you can help me. We have two options, I believe, to do this, right? One is to have a meeting next Thursday, same time. The Budget Committee needs to adopt a supplemental budget.
Mhm.
Can people make next Thursday at this time? We just need to know if we can have a quorum or not. And or the other option would be to do it ahead of the City Council meeting.
What's the date on Thursday? Are we talking about?
It's the 12th. I can't, I know I cannot make that date, so you'd have to make it to run the meeting. Or it would be the June 18th, we do it early before the City Council meeting,
Yeah, so I think,
5:30.
yes, at 5:30.
Whatever
It
you
would be
prefer.
5.
So we'll have an executive session at 4:30 on the 18th, which we propose, which we believe will last about an hour. And then at 5:30, we need to have the Budget Committee, which would be the city councilors and at least one committee member to make it official. So would then meet at 5:30 to do this supplemental budget work. And then we would say probably at 6 by the time counselors have already been sitting for an hour and a half to do all that.
Half an hour to do a supplemental budget?
Probably not.
It'll take 5 minutes, I think,
I
10
think we
minutes.
should do it sooner than that meeting, because if you're missing one counselor and we don't get one committee member, you don't get to approve it. But that's up to you guys.
But it would be on the,
Well, so that's the question. If the question is, could we get the quorum on the 12th? Maybe whoever can make it on the 12th, raise your hand.
I'm halfway.
Okay, so don't raise it then. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that enough? We don't have enough counselors, right? You have to have,
It would depend, I know that some of the counselors and budget committee members that aren't here now may be able to attend on the 12th. So I can, send out an email to everybody and get some verification, because the big thing with this is the supplemental budget needs to be noticed to the public.
Mhm.
So if we don't know we have a quorum for that day, then it's better to do it for the 16th. Just because.
this 18th. you mean?
18th, sorry.
Okay, so how many people could make it the 18th? That's our regular council meeting. So we've got at least one committee member. So maybe we should just go with the 18th and invite all the committee members so we can, at least we'll have Mickey here hopefully. And then if we had another person as backup, that would be great.
I'll send an email out to everyone. And, if we can't make the 12th work, we can definitely do the 18th.
So-
Unless you're instructing me to go for the
We'll
18th.
try the 12th.
Well, I was thinking we were deciding the 18th because otherwise we are going to have a bunch of people show up and then we may or may not be able to do it. And if we can just commit to the 18th and make sure everybody can be here, then it's a little bit of a longer meeting, but it's more efficient for people.
All right.
Yeah, it's the supplemental budget's going to be called for the vote, basically. Look over the document.
right.
Especially because I believe you've already talked about it here today. So,
Well, we've talked about the main topic was that grant
The grants.
funding had to be
Right.
Right.
distributed properly. Okay. So, everybody clear on that? So the meeting, the supplemental budget, the budget committee meeting for the supplemental budget will be June 18th at 5:30. Not 5, but 5:30. Thursday, June 18th.
Wednesday, June
Wednesday.
18th.
Oh my gosh.
Wednesday.
Thank you.
That's why I had
June
this
18th.
thought that the 18th, something was weird.
Something feels,
about that.
because it is weird because it's a Wednesday, not a Thursday.
Thank you.
I'll definitely make sure to underline and bold
Yes.
Wednesday.
on the agenda.
And also 5:30,
And, yeah,
because all of our budget committee meetings have been 5, that will be 5:30.
and then the city council agenda will have 6 bolded and underlined.
And
Except
4:30.
for 4:30 for the
Yeah,
executive
It's
session.
going to be very complicated.
It is.
3 agendas next week. I got it.
There's a
Got
lot,
it? Okay.
there's a lot
We'll
of
have to
room.
double check, make sure we
A lot of
proofread it so we don't, yeah, I know, lots of
It'll be me.
possibilities.
I'll be here too.
I'll fall on that grenade already. It'll
Okay.
be me.
And then the last thing to discuss, I had brought up, we did schedule the budget, an informational budget meeting, town hall, for Monday, June 16th, here at 5:30. So that's a town hall for the community.
Can you be there on Monday?
And I'm still kind of thinking about what the format is for that and what would be useful for the community to know and how to approach it. So if anybody has ideas, I mean, counselors or budget committee members, of things that you think would be helpful for us to do in that informational town hall meeting. I mean, I'm imagining it would have a part where we explain the situation and why we have to, in particular, the proposed public safety fee, but some of the other components of the budget. And then let people ask questions. But any other thoughts?
I think
Yes.
you and I spoke today, and I think you were on to something. I think we need to explain how we got here. And I don't know how far back we need to go, but last year we had, difficulties with the budget. And of course this year, but we're, with Ann's help, we're seeing our way out of that.
Yep.
So I think we just need to kind of, how did we get here kind of thing.
Yep. How do we get here? What we're up against, what the proposal is. We learned, by the way, we had talked about the public safety fee at the last meeting when we first talked about that public safety fund. And we just learned that Monday of this week, the city of Florence adopted one for $19 a month. So it's things, many cities are in this same situation right now because of the way that costs are just going up so high compared to
Prior levies.
so anyway, just to say that I know one of the budget committee members was like, is that really something you can do? And it is what it is. So anyway, yes.
I would maybe think about having a printout of the cities that are doing that to have for the public.
Uh-huh. Great.
Because most of them aren't going to actually take the time to look that up.
Right.
So if you have that printout,
I think we have a list of a number of cities. It'd be interesting to know
Chief
what
did,
they
and
are.
Chief just let me know that he would be able to attend
Okay,
on
that'd be great.
Monday, the 16th. So
Is there a limit to how many times a rate can go up like that? I mean, is it just through the city council? It's not something that's voted on by the public?
No,
the
so there's
city-
two different things. There's the police levy.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the way the taxes work is the tax rate is the permanent tax rate. It's always the same. And it's not enough to pay for everything. And so a lot of communities have these additional levies, in particular there's a lot of them for public safety. And so you'll recall, what was it, 2 years ago, we did the public safety levy, police levy. And that has come up, used to be every 3 years or 5 years?
It's 5 now.
Okay, so we're doing it every 5 years. And then in 5 years, you get a chance to it goes to the vote again. The fee does not go to a vote. The only way the public has an opportunity to participate in the fee is to come to the meeting, to talk to your counselors about what your community priorities are. And then you could vote us out, or you could, you can come and talk to us. And I mean, that's kind of the way that one works. And I think from talking to finance committee members, we're thinking about this as a patch to get through to the next levy, because that would be the ideal way to do this, is to let people know this is how much we need. And one of the things that in thinking about this and researching it, going back, that I realized is that we actually have a lower rate now than we did 10 years ago. It used to be $1.90 per thousand. And the last time or 2 times ago, we went down to $1.80 per thousand. So it kind of makes no sense because the rates have been going up. And I think the thing is, so often this body and just our community, we want to take care of people. We don't want to raise rates on people. But unfortunately, what that means is that, you know,
Services.
we're not going to have enough money to do what we need to do. So that's kind of like, that's the answer. But I think we're thinking of it as a patch to get through to the next time when everybody can vote. But people could talk to council members about what's important to them, and that could influence how, because ultimately this budget committee is recommending the budget to council, and council is going to make the final decision on what we decide to do.
One way or the other, the fee is either in the levy or we don't have a police department. You know, it's one way or the other. To have a police department, this is what it comes to.
But I think the point you were asking is there like a cap on it?
Yeah.
There's no cap on cost. I mean, they just keep going up and up and up. So, I mean, we'd love to say it could stay $1.80 forever, to be honest with you, but it's not doable. As a matter of fact, last budget session, and this is part of the educational piece, we had 2 committee members sit right there and tell us we needed to raise it, and we did not listen to them. And we wouldn't have raised it enough because they were suggesting, I think, around 220. if I remember.
They were suggesting 220 per thousand.
Right, and we didn't listen because we thought it wouldn't pass, but that didn't help us out. So that puts us in this position that we're in now. So this, we hope, is going to be sunsetted. So when the, 3.5 years, that'll go away. And then we hope people will still, want their policing. And, it's tough. It's expensive.
I mean, I think it was, in retrospect, you and I have talked about it was a major mistake. And I think it was, we didn't really have the right, and I'll say for myself, I didn't feel like I really understood the information at the time or had the right information to understand how that revenue source translated to the actual costs. And it's just gone up and up. So the costs, as Jim Prouty pointed out last time, like the insurance cost and the PERS for all of the officers and everything, even
All
though,
of us, it's not just the officers.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of us.
yeah, yes. And it's not, that's the way a lot of the general fund money, meaning our tax money, also goes to pay for law enforcement. We have some of it that's tax money, some of it that's that police levy, but it's not enough. And I've never understood why it's just not baked into our budget, why we have the separate thing. But it's just an artifact of how that permanent tax rate was capped. And then now, if you want to, some cities also have levies for things like parks or, in our
Streets.
community, the library is a separate district, but some communities, the library is within the community and they have. So that's the way that communities that want to have more services and amenities can choose to pay for it. But anyway.
It's the similar thing with parks. We talked about SDC, system
Mhm.
development charges, that some communities have parks SDCs, that when you move in and you have that you pay, for part of parks, or other ones have.
Everybody else has. So you're moving in new and you're buying into the park that everybody else.
Correct. Or there's even places that have a transportation use fee. So there's a nationwide calculation that says if you're a grocery store, you have this many trips per day, on average in and out of your business. Or as a household, you have 10 total trips in and out of your home or whatever. There's a national calculation that you can do to say, and every different type, a fast food restaurant is different than a sit-down restaurant, is different from a grocery store, is different from a convenience store. And then people pay to the system based on that for the streets that they drive on. So it's an interesting way. Again, Ann Heath did that when she was in Coburg, I think she talked about. So there's ways that communities have tried to leverage the funds for the services that people are getting. But we are in a very low tax burden area. You know, I mean, Southern Oregon is notorious for our love of our low taxes. But that's where this rub comes, you know? So I think everyone that I've heard would prefer that, yes, we would put it to the vote of the people and say, and have these listening sessions of a town hall to say, what is the most important? What do we have to have? Because then you start wondering, like, what is a town? What does it mean to do it? Like, what services are we providing to maintain our Port Orford-ness? And it's an interesting thought experiment to say, what are we paying for? What are we getting? What do we have? And then how do we improve that for our citizens?
I have a big question about the whole, when people have multiple homes or people have a home and they don't live here, they're not contributing to the community, and nor are they increasing the revenue because they're not using water, sewage. But I know we don't have the water to do, it's kind of a catch-22.
Yes.
But I feel like when there's homes that are just sitting there and don't have people in them to create revenue, to create community, I don't know if some cities have taken on some way of being able to tax.
Yeah, and we
looked at that in the finance committee.
Yeah.
A vacant home tax, and it's just kind of getting worked out, and we don't really want to be the ones having to face the lawsuit first.
But it's an interesting idea, and I think the thing that we have talked about that is short of that, but that would be a good thing, is right now we have people that have idle accounts, sometimes people who go away for 6 months in their idle accounts, and they're not paying the water base rates. And it's just saying they need to pay the water base rates year round, you know, and that's something we need to change, like ASAP.
And
Right.
law
So
enforcement.
that's something we're talking about too, because of for the whole system, because I didn't even realize something like that happened. But, you know, if it's an idle account, you might still have a house there or anything that's there. And it might, you know, if it's leaking 10 gallons a month, you know, but it's still not, it's just an interesting, they're like little zombie accounts that sort of are strange. So we're talking about saying we need to do away with those. Just
So would we
to have it.
consider people that have paid their SDCs in the 70s, would they be considered idle? Or it would be somebody that already has a meter at a property? How would we decide on what's idle?
Well, I think these are just like kernels of discussions to have, but in things that I've thought of is, you know, if it's bare ground and there's maybe a stub out, but it's not a meter and it's not anything like that, that could be just truly an idle, nothing's happening there. But if you have a home that
Right.
has been hooked up, that has a meter, that has
Yeah.
whatever, and it's just sitting there, it needs to be paying, that home can be paying into the system.
Yeah.
Because again, even if you use a gallon
Right.
or no gallons, if you have an active account, you would be
Yeah.
paying into the system. And we have a large number of those sorts of
They've been
places.
churning off the water and then they don't get billed until they come back.
They have to pay a fee, but the fee doesn't quite equal what the base rate would.
Correct.
So they have to pay a considerable fee to turn it, I don't know, it's either off or on.
It's on. So it's
back on.
$180 to turn it back on. So if you had, so for instance, someone who maybe snowbirds in the winter, so they turn it off and,
Come back
No.
and pay 180.
exactly.
So we do have something in place. which
Yeah, it
is
seems
good.
like that's got some.
And next year, there could be some towns that do the vacant home tax
Well,
and already
actually,
have it
yeah.
in place.
I was telling Ann a story this morning, but I remember the story. I believe it was a city in Utah, and they voted to do, so there's a permanent tax rate like we have, but they changed the tax rate for these vacant homes. It's higher.
Uh-huh.
And I think they passed it and it went through.
Uh-huh.
So-
And there's also, I think I've read, so also like kind of vacant home surcharge, you know, vacant home surcharge, you
yeah.
know, or something like that.
So,
But getting back to your question about what is community, you know, being a city and being part of the city, you know, in a really fundamental way is like, we're all kind of part of the water system club and the law enforcement club. You know, we have that benefit of being able to know we can call and have officers here, whereas people who live out don't have those things. And that's, you know, those are sort of the fundamental services that then give us the opportunity to make community, because we have a sense of security and that comes with those things here. And anyway, and one of the things I'll say is that before you're, get roped into being part of city council or city government, you can be blissfully ignorant about the costs of, or just how all this works, because you just turn on your water, or you just, and once you start to realize, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff that has to go into this, then you realize
Yes, all that.
there's yeah, that there's a lot that goes into it, and that
We're all
our
tired.
staff really works hard to make these things happen. So anyway,
Keep forgetting to ask, are the union negotiations included in this? We're going to go through that again this year, aren't we?
Yeah, we start the process soon to start with that, because then, yes, we are going to have 2 union negotiation situations, one for the Teamsters, which is Public Works, and a couple people in the main office, and then law enforcement has their own law enforcement union now. And so we'll be
So we've
having
got a
2.
percentage, what is it, the CPI?
legal, or, oh, you mean for the personnel?
Raise,
Increases.
yeah,
Mhm.
increases, yeah. That's worked into this budget. A minimum of,
I think maybe just the COLA, but not,
Yeah, the COLA piece, which is, an increase that goes year to year, the cost of living.
that's included. So we could say that's got to be it, or we,
Well, we're gonna have to,
that's
see when
another
it's a different discussion for a different day. But yeah, we
but
don't
do
have a lot of
employees
extra.
have anything to do with that, or is it just the unions?
I'm sorry?
Do the employees, if the employees all know the situation, it would seem like they would go along with,
Yeah, they have shop stewards.
but
So each department.
they're
has-
representing the
They
employees.
represent the
Mhm.
employees,
But
correct?
And they have
can't-
meetings, and the employees, we're so small that there's a handful of in each. And so, yes, they very much talk with their people and say what will work for them and what won't.
Okay, well, just to, I would just say if anybody has any other thoughts or ideas about that budget town hall, let me know. And that will be a good and important thing to do. So with that, are there any other questions or discussion points before Sarah, you look like you have a question.
Well, I was just thinking, the $12 month fee, that's something that will have to go on, I believe, for the next 3 or 4 years.
Like, as I was saying, to patch through to
Pass
the,
through. So I think that
levy.
needs to be made clear
Uh-huh.
to the community that this isn't just this year.
Yeah, definitely.
well, and we,
Transparent on
and
that.
here, I mean, this is actually will be a discussion for council, how we want to do it. We could adopt it for 1 year, or we could adopt it for the 3.5 years through the patch. And there's pros and cons of doing either of those. One of the things that Tim and I talked about was that, in the meantime, we can be working on other things. But the bottom line is, the fundamental problem is it costs more to do things than we're taking in. So we can try to squeeze turnips and change out light bulbs, and, there's a lot, we can be nickel and diming and trying to reduce. But the fundamental thing is, if we want to have the services at the level we have to pay for it, So anyway, and if we don't, then we have to, it's kind of hard cause we're such bare bones. It's kind of hard to think about how to reduce services, Anyway.
And that's the hard part with any budget. Again, it's a snapshot. So this is our best guess of what we hope will be and that we can do. But again, where I first started with this whole thing, even with the PowerPoint up there, is the only way to manage costs are to increase your revenue or decrease your expenses. That's it. And so these hard decisions are the things that these counselors are volunteering to do and the decisions you volunteers are doing. So we appreciate you all doing that. But this is where the rubber meets the road, where you have to be very thoughtful about that. And anytime we're talking money, it's not comfortable and it's hard. So thank you for walking in this with us. We appreciate it.
I just wanted to mention, I don't think this would affect the town hall meeting, but I was looking at my water bill.
Mhm.
Everybody, I'm sure, thinks of it as a water bill, but I was glad to see when I looked at it that it doesn't say that I'm a water bill on it anywhere.
Mm-mm.
So easily, I think, when you're reformatting it, I'm sure you will separate the water from this so that there's no chance anybody's going to say, well, you're trying to squeeze that in here where we wouldn't notice it. We don't want that. So
Right.
I just wanted to mention that make sure the formatting.
Yep.
Yeah, and we will have to do that. And it's interesting you mentioned that because it does say water reserves and water base on the right-hand side, and it also says sewer, but everyone calls it a water bill.
Yeah.
It's actually the utility bill. That's true. I do want to call out, so anybody that's online or in here too, there is a clerical error on those this month. It says that it's due on May 30th, which was before we sent out the bill. So that date is wrong. The date that the bills are due this month is June 25th. So just so people don't panic, it's due like normal on the 25th of the month.
Did you all pass that about where people pay with a credit card, that there'll be a fee? Is that something that?
There is already a fee. It's just that we would pass that on. So that was a suggestion with that. So yeah, online, when they pay through the portal online,
Yeah.
yes, that's a suggestion that we have.
It's in progress, right?
Yeah,
We
it's in
haven't done it yet.
No.
So every one of these changes to like turn the dial is like a project,
But it's what you folks have said is your recommendation to the council is that this budget was built on that piece. And so that, yes, this is something that you say you've agreed, said you want to do. Mhm.
And our ultimate goal, and one of the main points for the town hall, is we don't want to take away the citizens' right to vote for the police levy. We want to make sure they have that right. This is just a fix to get us by. We want that fix to go away, and we want you to decide if, public safety is important to you. And,
It is.
personally, I feel that it's very important, and I feel that our citizens will continue to back us because we all know what happens to cities that don't have law enforcement. Even here on the Oregon coast, it's not good.
Well, especially with the sheriff's situation.
Well, yeah, I don't even.
And the other piece of that is the last law enforcement levy did pass by like 85%. So I read that as,
Here in the city.
yeah, in the city,
One
yeah.
before that,
The public safety, yes, the one that was just recently passed. So, I mean, I take that to mean people value that. And maybe if it was more expensive, they would have said no. I don't know, but I take it as we value that. So it's kind of like, do we take that away without asking people? You know what I mean? It's like, that's why we just have to put it out and understand, if people want to say, but I think, anyway.
we
it's a
do
hard
need to
decision.
find more ways of trying to reach everybody in the community with information about, so that when they make a decision, it's educated, not just uneducated.
But this is getting back to your question too, Lori, this is going to be one of those questions, one of those times where when you elect your city councilors, you kind of have to trust that we're going to be wrestling with these issues and do our best. And maybe we make mistakes at times, like I just described, of like we did not put enough money in when we put that levy up. In retrospect, I don't think we put enough. At the time, council really thought that was going to be fine. We just either didn't have the right information or enough information. It was an error on our part. So now we have to like fix that and make up for that mistake. And so we're trying and we'll do our best to figure out that balance. And
Somewhere in that time, the highway got changed too.
right, yes, oh yeah, that's the big
And I
thing.
think that might be, because I remember Dave Johnson making that suggestion that we went from the 190 to 180. and we were still getting the ticket revenue of
Oh.
140,000 or something a year that went away as soon as it got
Yeah.
two-lane.
I think we lost something like 200,000
Yeah.
at the height of it.
And that would happen a lot sooner had ODOT been, that road was supposed to be done like 3 or 4 years before it got done. So we would have had this problem much earlier had that road diet been completed on time, and it wasn't, thankfully, because we're going to have to suffer through this levy, but hopefully for next levy, we'll get things straightened out.
Okay, well, with that, I think this has been a good discussion. I will echo what Melissa said of really appreciating you citizens for joining us in this. And of course, appreciate you counselors for wrestling with this too, and staff for like wrestling with this too. Everybody's trying to sort it out as best we can. So with that, we'll adjourn this meeting at 6:25. Thank you all.
Thank you. I have appreciated getting to understand